Hey, what's going on? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. This is going to be the second part of the video that I previously just made, which is about how to create lead lines and melody lines by connecting and understanding the relationship between chord tones and scale tones. Okay, so basically, if you recall from the previous video, which I linked you to right below this video, you have an overall scalar framework. Okay, so in the previous video we were in the key of G major. Okay, so our overall scalar framework was the G major scale. You can play all of the notes of the G major scale up and down the neck of the guitar, but within that scalar framework you have your chord tones. Okay, so you're honing in on, you know, specific notes within that scalar framework. Okay, and you are hitting the idea is you want to hit the chord tones as the underlying chord is occurring. Okay, so the previous video we did a major key. The chord progression was simply just G major to D major to C major. Okay, so in this video we're going to do a minor key. It's going to be the same chord progression, only it's going to be the sadder version of the same chord progression, because we're going to replace the G major chord with an E minor chord. Okay, so the chord progression is going to be E minor to D major to C major. Okay, so you're in the key of E minor now instead of G major. They are relative to one another. They share the same notes as each other. Everything's the same. The only difference is because that one chord replacement took place, everything now has a sadder sound to it. Okay, it has a minor tonality to it. All right, if you don't understand what I mean by that, check out the relative major minor concept video, and that should help clear some things up. Okay, so the chord progression we're soloing over is going to be E minor to D major to C major. Alright, so before I move on and give the musical demonstrations, let me just point out a few things real quick. So when you're moving from one chord tone to the next as the underlying chord is occurring, there's a couple different paths you can take, and this is going to be a lot easier demonstrated simply through example. Okay, so let's say that we're in this position here. Okay, we're right around the 12th to 15th fret area. Okay, your diatonic scale is this. Okay, that's your diatonic scale, E minor or G major. Okay, same set of notes. All the notes are there for your scalar framework, and that's just that position. Okay, you have the whole fretboard to work with, but we're just kind of honing in on this position for now. Okay, so now let's say the E minor chord to the D major chord to the C major chord. Let's say the chord tone that I want to hit on each chord. Okay, so let's say as the E minor chord is occurring, this is the chord tone I want to hit. Okay, and then when it goes to the D major chord, let's say that this is the chord tone that I want to hit. And let's say when the C major chord occurs, this is the chord tone that I want to hit. Okay, so the simplest and most direct way, and also the most boring way, would be just hit the chord tones. Okay, so I'm just going to play my looped progression, and I'm just going to hit just those chord tones. Okay, so let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so chord tones, I hit it as each chord was occurring. I just hit the chord tone. Alright, but I want to spice up my playing a little bit, so how can I walk from one chord tone to the next? Well, there's a couple different pathways that you can take. Number one, you can take the scalar pathway. You can use the scale tones as your paths while the current chord is playing. As you're anticipating the next chord to come, you can kind of walk around within the scale. So let me just, it's a lot easier to just play it than to try and explain it. So let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so you see how I'm kind of using the other scale notes to walk from one chord tone to the next and timing it out such that, you know, when the next chord, as soon as the next chord hits, that's when I'm landing on my targeted tone, okay? So I'm going from here to here to here. Okay, so that's one pathway. You can use the scale as your pathway. You can also use the arpeggio shapes or the chord shapes or the cage shapes, whatever you want to refer to them as your pathways, okay? So again, let me just demonstrate this. Okay, so now you see that as the current chord is occurring, I'm kind of just outlining the shape of the current chord. Alright, so because we're right in this position, the particular arpeggio that's available to us for the E minor chord is this one. Okay, and then for the D major chord in this particular pattern, this is the shape that's available to us. Okay, and then for the C major chord in this particular area of the fretboard, in this key, this is the shape that's available to us. Okay, so I'm using those as my pathways. So you have a scalar pathway, which I consider to be horizontal because you have more notes in the... Okay, it's more movement in the horizontal direction. And then you have the arpeggio pathway, which is kind of in this direction, the vertical direction. So that's two different ways to walk from chord tone to chord tone, okay? Remember, my destinations are here, here, and here. Okay, and you can also use non-scale notes as well. Chromatic notes, notes that aren't in the key at all, alright? And that sounds fine too. They're, more often than not, they work better as passing tones than tones that you want to land on, but let me just demonstrate how that's going to sound. So, same three destinations. Okay, so now I'm just trying to, you know, little leading tones moving to the chord tone that I'm aiming for, alright? So, you can use the scale as your pathway, you can use the arpeggio shapes as your pathway, or you can use chromatic notes as your pathway. You can also combine them in any way you want, alright? These are just some ideas, alright? So, with that said, with those three ideas, or with those three pathways, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give the same exact two musical demonstrations that I did in the previous video. First, just doing the scale stuff. I'm only going to be thinking E minor scale over the whole entire fretboard, completely disregarding chord tones. And then I'm going to give a musical demonstration in which I focus on chord tones. And maybe you can see how I use some of these pathways to help me walk from one chord tone to the next. Alright, so the first one, just the scale. So let's hear how that sounds. So that was just using the E minor scale. I was kind of purposely trying to, just demonstrate how doing things like that can tend to get redundant over time because you're just playing scales, completely disregarding the chord tones. People do it all the time. You can use your ear as your guide to help you choose which notes are, better landing notes. But ultimately, you want to have more control over your playing. You want to know what the chord progression is that's going on underneath, and you want to be able to, just have the ability to land on chord tones on command, all right? So now I'm going to start focusing on the chord tones, okay? E minor, D major, C major. Those are my 3 chords. Now I'm going to focus on chord tones. Pay attention to the pathways that I'm using. Alright, so that was just a quick little improv, showing you how you might go about connecting chord tones using the scale as your path, okay? So, quick little improv, you can use this stuff to compose solos, you can use this stuff to improvise solos, whatever you want to do. This is just the framework to work within, okay? So, the previous video was a major key. This is now the relative minor key of what we just did in the previous video. So you get to hear how it sounds for both major and minor. So that's that. If you have any questions, hit me up. Thanks a lot.